Hi, I'm Mr. Mobijohn. How are you? I'm your science teacher for seventh grade. So, welcome back. Um, let's see, what are we going to learn in science? Well, we're going to start with basic chemistry, and then we'll move on to solids, liquids, and gases, and matter and energy, basically. Obviously, um, we might have to tweak things as we go along. Okay, so not everything's written in stone. We will also be doing virtual field trips, and you'll learn about the flora and fauna of the area, of the Poughkeepsie area, of the northeastern area. Okay, I happen to live on 10 acres of property, and we'll be exploring that. We'll be also exploring certain areas of where I live, so you could get an enlightenment of the Northeast. We have many things to talk about. So, a little bit about me. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, um, Bedford Stuyvesant area of Brooklyn, um, back in the early '60s, long time ago. Um, okay, um, during my life, there were uncertainties during when I lived uh, that mirror the uncertainties that are taking place now. For example, when I was alive, um, we had I lived through the assassination of many notable figures. One was John F. Kennedy, our president back then, and then Robert F. Kennedy, uh, Senator Robert F. Kennedy. They were both felled by assassins. Also, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, just to name a few. All of those people were killed, were murdered, assassinated by guns, which mirrors what's taking place today because a lot of the violence that's taking place today is caused by guns. Okay? I also lived through the civil rights movement. Back then, many many black people didn't have their full measure of civil rights. Uh, Black people weren't allowed to vote. They had to sit in the back of the bus, um, among many other indignities. Um, as I said, they couldn't vote. They couldn't sit at lunch counters. They had to sit in certain areas of a movie theater. Back then, they had black. They didn't even refer to uh, African Americans as black. They called them colored people. Okay, and that was often a derogatory remark for a black person. Um, we've gone through a lot of changes today. Now we're allowed to ride on any part of the bus we want to, but there's still things that we still have to fight about. And what I mean by fighting is protest about, demonstrate. Okay. Um, Back then, Martin Luther King headed the civil rights movement, and he followed the teachings of Gandhi, who was also a nonviolent person. So Martin Luther King was able to use nonviolent protest in uh, in gaining civil rights for African Americans. Today we see a different thing. We see a lot of protests, but they're turning out to be violent in some ways. For example, looting and killing. So I'd like to follow the teachings of Martin Luther King and protest without violence because I feel we can gain the same type of things that Martin Luther King was fighting for back then through nonviolence. Um, Back then, before I was even born, my mother lived through a period of denial of civil rights, and as a result, she had to do certain things to enable herself to get a better job back then. Because to be honestly, back in when my mother was alive, things were so much worse for Black people. Um, they were there were no laws. There were lynchings that took place, and people would get away with it. Um, so my mother, she, because of her fair skin, she passed for a Caucasian person. In other words, she pretended to be a white person. Okay, back then. She did that in order to get a better job, only because to be black was uh, was not an advantage back then. Okay, so she did what she had to do, as she would tell me, to do better. Okay, um, so this is my story. Okay, it was nice meeting you, boys and girls. I have some questions that follow through with what I've talked about. You could also read my introduction and have a great day. Okay, take care now. Bye.